Welcome to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder.
Welcome back to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder with Brian Chu, managing partner at OC Wills and Trusts, and a trusted estate planning attorney with more than 25 years of experience helping families across Orange County protect their wealth and plan for the future. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and in this episode, we're digging into Dynasty Trusts, what they are, how they work, and why they're one of the most powerful tools for protecting your family's legacy across multiple generations. Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me on today.
So let's start with this. There's probably a lot of people who don't know what this means. What exactly is a dynasty trust, and why might a parent with kids consider one?
So the Dynasty Trust, and the thing is, a lot of people call this a lot of different things, and even the term Dynasty Trust can mean different things. But for our purposes, when we create what we typically are creating a revocable living trust for our clients, within that revocable trust is a provision for what we call a Dynasty Trust. The Dynasty Trust is a way that we can have money go to our kids, but provide them lifetime asset protection for their assets. And, without having any downside for the parents while they're alive. So we're not creating any kind of Dynasty Trust today, no irrevocable trust, which the Dynasty Trust is eventually. No irrevocable trust is being created today. When we do the revocable trust, it's simply a provision within the trust that says upon usually both parents passing that these Dynasty Trusts will be created at that time.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So how can a Dynasty Trust protect children from divorce, lawsuits, bad decisions, so on?
The way the Dynasty Trust works is at this point, the parents have made a decision that, and like all parents, that at some age we're going to trust our kids. And under normal circumstances, if we do what we call age-based or outright planning, the money would just go to them. So if we had two kids at $2 million, something happens to my wife and I, each child will get a check for $1 million, essentially. Okay. Instead, if you want to give your children options to have protection from creditors, judgment, divorce, etc., we can have them, instead of getting $1 million, a check for $1 million, they'll get a trust with $1 million in it. Okay. And that's the Dynasty Trust. And the primary benefit of the Dynasty Trust is that at that point, they'll have complete control and access to the money that's in the trust, but they will not own it. Okay. And that the general principle of asset protection, which is something very difficult to do for your own money. Okay. Mm-hmm. You can't have a trust that you have complete control and access to and say my creditors can't touch it. Doesn't work that way, at least not here in California. And so I can't do much for my clients in terms of their own money, but you could do something for your kids. And as a result, when they get this trust, they'll have complete control and access, but won't own it. And again, that's a definition of asset protection. You cannot lose what you do not own. Okay.
And does it mean, does a Dynasty Trust mean you're kind of giving up control?
For you as the parents, you're giving up no control because nothing's happening while you're alive. In a typical revocable trust, while you're alive, it's your money. You can do whatever you want with your assets, and until both of you pass, only then typically is the Dynasty Trust created by the then acting trustee. Will create the however many kids you got. They'll create a trust for each one of them, and then move the assets into that trust. So up until that point, though, you're in charge, and the assets are for you. You have complete control. Even if you are incapacitated, you still have complete control under your revocable trust, because this Dynasty Trust does not kick in until after you, again, typically both pass.
From what we're talking about, is this really more geared towards high net worth individuals or families? Is it more, for lack of a better term, is it for rich people?
I mean, again, it depends on your definition of rich people.
That's a good point.
There is no minimum. Okay. Right. Obviously, if maybe you had $50,000, it probably wouldn't make sense to do a lifetime trust at that point. Right. But as soon as we're talking hundreds of thousands per child, I definitely think that's something worth consideration. At the end of the day, the nice thing about the Dynasty Trust, there's no downside for anybody. Okay. For the parents, there's no downside because nothing's happening. They don't benefit, or this Dynasty Trust doesn't affect them because nothing's happening while they're alive. For the kids, at the end of the day, the nice thing about the Dynasty Trust, it's very flexible. Okay. So while they have protection from creditors, judgment, divorce, etc., because they don't own the money. Okay. In other words, the basic concept here is I have this trust. It's a separate entity at that point. I control the entity. I can take money out. I control the entity in the sense of I control what's in it. Thus, I can invest the money any way I want. I can invest the money in stocks, bonds, real estate. cryptocurrency, whatever I want, or keep it in cash, whatever I want to do, I as the trustee of my share at that point, and again, this is your children at that point because you've passed, they will control their individual share. What one child does with their share doesn't affect the other children unless they happen to co-own something. So they have complete control to invest the money when they want. Two, they have complete access to the money. So here's where the flexibility comes from. At the end of the day, your children can end their dynasty trust by taking some or all the money out of their trust anytime they want. Okay, so there's no downside for any individual child because any individual child, anytime, once they get this trust, can take all the money out. So that can happen on day one, 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later. If they don't like their dynasty trust for whatever reason, they can end it by just taking the money out, and then their own estate planning will take over at that point. But if they're smart about it, they will leave the money in the trust because as long as the money's in trust, it's protected from their creditors' judgment, divorce, etc., because they do not own it. And most importantly, they never owned it. It was your money here, they're here, it went here. It's in this holding trust and will remain in this holding or dynasty trust for as long as your children wanted to stay there. Okay, and as long as it's there, again, they can't lose it because to a creditor because they don't own it. You cannot lose what you do not own.
So that's kind of how you sort of, for lack of a better term, it keeps the assets in the family for forever, for as long as it's there.
Yeah, maybe not quite forever, but I believe in California at least, we have a law against perpetuities, which says the trust can't last longer than 90 years, but that's 90 years after your passing. So, who knows, how long your money goes, but it usually can typically last 2 generations, assuming your kids don't spend the money. I do tell people it does make it more likely the money will stay in your family because it's not a guarantee. And here's the thing, if your kids choose to keep the money in the trust, they will have to live with your estate plan as the parents' estate plan that says when they pass away when your children pass away one day, the money first would go to that child's children, the parents' grandchildren, or even great-grandchildren at that point. Or it will go, if they have no children, it will go to their sibling or the sibling's children or somebody else blood related to you. Mm-hmm. So who does that typically leave out? No spouses. Okay, mm-hmm. Because by default, if something happened to me and my wife, my money goes to my kids and they just get it outright. They get it. Now they get that $1 million and then they pass. I don't know what happens to that money. Okay. Some of it might go to spouse, and maybe that's fine. But if this makes it more likely the money will stay within the family because by default, it will never go to a spouse. Now, with that being said, the children still have flexibility. If they really want that money to go to their spouse or somebody else, they don't want to go to their kids or their siblings, whoever it is, they can take the money out of the trust and do whatever they want at that point. So again, for your kids, no downside because they have complete options available to them. But if they want the protection, they need to keep the money in the trust.
And the kids can take out as much as they want. They don't have to. It's not an all or nothing kind of deal, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, let's say they put $1 million in a checking account. It's a checking account. Write a check themselves anytime they want for how much money, and because they're the only person in charge, they're the trustee of the trust, assuming they're old enough. Again, and this thing, we can set up this trust even the kids are young, because we'll still have the same provision in the trust that says my kids will not get control, they will not take over their dynasty trust if something happens to my wife and I. Until in my trust it says they don't get control until the age of 25. Pretty typical age. But after 25, they would have complete control. If assuming we passed away, they'd have complete control and access to take some or all the money out of the trust anytime they want. But yes, it's not all or nothing.
What are the situations where you would recommend a dynasty trust? What kind of questions do you ask where you're like, oh, this is the right product for you?
Usually, again, if my clients, if again, we're talking more than $1 million per kid, usually that's pretty much an automatic, that's something I would bring up. If my clients who have adult children, I ask them, what do your kids do for a living? And if they happen to be an attorney, doctor, dentist, CPA, licensed professionals who have personal liability for the professional actions. In other words, as an attorney, because I own my firm, even though I don't own the firm, as an attorney, I am personally liable for my professional malpractice. So if I commit malpractice, even if I work for somebody, I can still be sued individually. And even though I have a corporation, that corporation does not protect me against my own malpractice, which means all my personal assets are exposed. In the case of, and thus, if they inherit money from you, that money becomes exposed as well. You have the dynasty trust; they keep the money in the dynasty trust, especially if they're a high-risk profession, or they take their entrepreneurs, they sign personal guarantees on loans or leases. That money, if they get sued personally, but they have money in a dynasty trust from you, that money, that creditor cannot go after that money.
Okay. Are there provisions that you put in or stipulations that you can put into these? Because like I know in some cases, if kids have addiction problems, gambling problems, whatever, the parents want to have more of a structured way of them getting money and not give them a large lump sum. Are there provisions you can make in dynasty trusts that are similar to this?
So it's actually in our standard revocable trust, those provisions are already in it to some extent. As an example, we always have a drug and alcohol clause in there, substance abuse, basically. And if that were the case, even if there is a dynasty trust provision, the kids would be prevented from taking over, or whichever one has that problem could be prevented from taking over the money. So, or if the person has a problem like a disability, we wouldn't set up a dynasty trust for them. We would have a lifetime trust for that person.
Right.
Because the thing with the dynasty trust is we're allowing the kids to become in charge of their trust. Okay. If we do a typical lifetime trust, the goal is, or even age-based, the goal is we don't want to have the children in charge of the money until A, for the rest of their lives, or B, until they hit a certain age. Somebody else is going to be in charge. Mm-hmm. Okay. But again, we still, again, substance abuse, gambling is a little different because obviously that's, you would have to put that in specifically, but in our trust as a backup clause, we always have the trustee always has the ability to, if they think somebody has a drug or alcohol problem, they have the ability to withhold the money, the then acting trustee. Of course, that's assuming you didn't make the kids the trustee in the first place. So obviously, once you put the kids in charge, all bets are off at that point. It doesn't matter what your trust says to some extent. If a child A is the trustee and child A, since they get to determine whether somebody has a drug or alcohol problem, at least initially, there's not that child A can pretty much do anything they want to someone unless someone else wants to step up and spend their own money to sue them.
Yeah. So if you are they easy to change? Like, for example, if you do set up a dynasty trust, you put your kids in charge, you have the best intentions, and then later on you're still alive and then your child develops an addiction problem or some reason why you don't want them to be in charge of the money. Is it easy to make a change so that you don't have to worry about that?
Yes, all revocable. The trust is revocable, amendable. Again, since we're not creating a kind of irrevocable trust today, you could change any and all the terms of your revocable trust, including who's in charge after you. And so that's why 99% of my clients are do revocable trust. And then again, a fair amount of them will do, about half my clients will opt to do the dynasty trust provision. It is kind of our next level of planning. They'll opt to do it. But again, they have full control to decide, change their mind about the terms of that dynasty trust anytime they want.
Are there any situations where a dynasty trust would be irrevocable, or is that just not how these work?
So when we have clients that have estate tax issues, which is 99% of us do not, because we don't have 15, as of next year will be $15 million individually or $30 million as a couple.
I don't. I can tell you that right now, Brian.
And I don't either. And so most of us don't have that problem. So we're not doing a lot of irrevocable trusts. But yeah, there are, and that's why, a lot of times my clients, I'll talk about dynasty trusts and they'll try to do their own independent research on it. And they'll read stuff about irrevocable trusts we're creating today. And they call them dynasty trusts. Again, dynasty trust is just nomenclature, not a legal term. And there are trusts that can be created that are irrevocable today. But usually they're done for different reasons. Again, you're giving up control of the asset typically, or giving up access to the asset typically. And so it's usually involving estate tax issues. But again, unfortunately, for better or worse, 99% of my clients still don't have that problem.
But you said about half your clients do a dynasty trust, huh?
Yes. Are the ones that, we recommend, well, at least we not necessarily recommend, we give them options, say, okay, you might want to consider doing this. And then half of them will opt to do it. Other half. And then of that half that don't do it, a lot of them just don't have kids. And so usually people doing this because they have kids. Most people aren't going to invest, while the fee is somewhat nominal, at least up front. Some of them, it's just not, most people, if they're giving money to siblings or even nieces and nephews, a lot of times they won't be too concerned about asset protection for those people.
What makes your firm's approach to long-term protection different, in your opinion?
The fact just that we bring it up. We service a lot of clients, people who did a trust with somebody else. And for a variety of reasons, they've kind of come to us to update the trust. And, one of the things, again, if I look at their circumstances and feel it's appropriate, and which again is the bulk of my clients, I'll bring it up and ask, most of the time we don't see it in the trust currently. And B, I ask them to, and again, they may have forgotten, but ask, did your attorney ever even bring this up as an option? And most of them have said, or even we have clients who are interviewing attorneys and stuff like that, and I bring it up with them during our interview, and I say, did the other attorneys even bring this up as an option for you? And so that's, again, because the approach doesn't change necessarily in the sense of I want my money to go to my kids. It's just how, and because the when part's the same. What age do I trust them to be in charge? So that change. So it's really a very simple decision. Do I want to give my kids the option to have this protection? Okay. If not, that's fine. And again, it's completely, and this can be, I tell my clients, if you want to do it now, and, it's some number of those people that don't do it now, eventually will do it later, especially if they're, maybe if their finances go up and now they feel there's enough money to justify it. Or like I said, their kids, now their kids grow up and they are going to be doctors, attorneys and stuff like that. And then they see the value of giving their kids the option. So at that point, if I'm your child and I'm a doctor, if my parents are doing an estate plan and they're, kind of going back and debating whether they should do it or not. And, well, again, the cost is fairly nominal to do it. If my parents aren't willing to do it because they're not willing, I'll pay the cost. I'll pay the nominal fee because I want the protection, because it only benefits me as the child. And so if it's me, I want the protection. Now, occasionally I've had a handful of times where for whatever reason, the kids say, I don't want it. I said, all right, well, you don't have to put it in. There's no point in putting it in if your kids aren't going to do it. But again, that decision may change. Even.
Yeah, that's true.
So again, I mean, circumstances for your kids may change, especially when they're young. They feel, I don't have much risk. But, as they get older, have their own kids, there may be more risks. And so, again, there's no downside to putting it in. I almost have no one take it out. I can't recall a situation where somebody's actually taken that out of their trust. Because, again, there's no downside. Right. If your kids don't like it, they don't have to do it.
You don't have to do it. Yeah. Easy enough. Yeah.
So that's why I'm not sure, why, most estate plans don't have this, people with modest wealth don't have it as at least an option. Yeah,
that makes sense. Definitely.
Because, and the thing is, you could even be, that child, they may not have an issue right now, but they could be in the middle of an issue. And if you don't have the provision in there, you can't opt to do it, later when I'm being the child. Okay. But if it's in there, again, you can do it. And then, you said 10 years later, you think it's not worth I don't want to bother with this anymore. Then you take the money out of the trust and get rid of it.
Yeah. So, that's pretty,
no downside.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. That's why I'm surprised more people don't have it. In their planning.
All right. Well, that'll do it for today. Thanks so much for listening. If you're thinking about how to preserve your wealth beyond just the next generation, or if you want to make sure your family is protected no matter what the future holds, the Dynasty Trust could be a key part of your plan. And to learn more, schedule a consultation, visit ocwillsandtrusts.com or call the office to speak with Brian and his team. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave us a review. We greatly appreciate it. Brian, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.